Welcome on Texas football. It's time to do the offensive grades. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel. This episode brought to you by the folks at Allegiant Digital Marketing. Hey, CJ, I love it. Longhorns go out and win 51-3. It's Arch Manning's debut as a starter. Everybody is talking about Arch Manning. All Jaydon Blue seems to do, though, is run and keep running and making big plays. 25 carries for the young running back out of Klein, Texas, 124 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, a touchdown in the air as well. This was a very interesting offensive performance. We're going to grade each and every position like we do each and every week here before we get going. But what did you think of the offensive performance overall before we move forward?
Yeah, I thought it had its highs. I thought there were maybe some lows in there as well. And it's part of having a first-time starting quarterback that's, relatively young in his playing days, right? You're going to have those moments. There are a couple things that really stood out to me. I'll start with the running game. I mentioned it, late last night, Bobby. It felt like it was a quiet 125 yards for Jaydon Blue. And I don't mean that in a way that's taking away from his big night. Because, again, you find the end zone 4 times. Yeah, you're the player of the game, 100%. But you had the one run, right, that went for 20. You had 3 others that went for beyond 10. The rest were just, 5 to 7 to 8 yard gains. And those rack up, but over time, you look down and, the minute that you're averaging 5 yards a carry and, you're over north of 100 yards, you're having a pretty darn good day. So it's that offensive line, the ability for them to get push, create some running lanes, find ways for that running game to succeed, and then at the end of the day, look back and say, oh, wow, that was actually a pretty darn good showing. That's positive, right? Because it hasn't been that way consistently this whole season, right? That's kind of been, we wanted to see more from the running game. Everything else in this offense looks pretty good. Everything else on this team looks pretty good. Now let's get that running game really going. Right now, a step in the right direction. The other one I wanted to mention, the big play down the field. That felt like, Bobby, we hadn't really seen a whole lot of that really since Sarkisian took over. And since 2022, really, when Quinn was the quarterback, the bombs down the field, I'm talking the 40-yard pass attempts, that's not necessarily been a part of Quinn's game. It certainly looks like it will be part of Arch Manning's game. We saw that a lot on Saturday, maybe a little bit too much, if I have to be honest. But right now, if that's going to be the fun part, the big explosive plays, sign me up.
Yeah, we're going to go over this position by position, CJ. It is clear he went deep early and often.
Yes.
So let's start and talk about the quarterback grade. Obviously, Arch Manning, the only one that threw a pass on Saturday, 15 of 29 for 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The good, those deep balls. He threw quite a few of them that were on target. The bad, he put the ball in harm's way, perhaps a little too much, once or twice on those deep balls, but also he had 2 picks on plays. One was a window where he threw a fastball that Jaydon Blue glanced off his hands and ended up intercepted. It was a 3rd down play that, frankly, if he would have just feathered the ball in, which Quinn often does, it would have gone for probably a nice gain, and Texas would have kept moving within the 2-minute drill of the first half. The first one, of course, was the one that felt like he was just getting it out of the way. He evaded 2 rushers and then threw it very, very late on the outside to Matthew Golden, and it was easily picked off. It felt like he threw that into coverage. He also had a couple other throws into coverage.
Yeah,
but let me finish this. But it was his first start. It's seasoning and experience that has to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. To that, also some pretty a pretty talented wide receiver room that he's throwing to here now.
Yeah.
Not to take away from Arch and his evening, I did want to say I think this was coming back down to earth for Arch just a little bit, right? You light the world on fire against UTSA. I think that's the expectation moving forward. Maybe unfairly, but also you got the 5-star pedigree, you got the last name. You did put it on tape a week ago that you're a pretty darn good quarterback. You'd like to see it again, but these are the learning moments. For me, it was probably a B- for Arch, and I say that because I don't think you saw a complete arsenal for Arch Manning as the quarterback at Texas. I think you will see him use his legs more and more as we know that Texas quarterback room is going to be healthy when he is the starting quarterback next year. Right now, obviously, with him, being QB2 and having to start today, you don't want him to take unnecessary hits, and therefore, I don't think you saw the running game as a factor. I think he only had, the one rush attempt that he's credit for was the sack in which he lost 4 yards. So he didn't attempt anything there, but the passing to me was interesting. I thought that the pass attempts deep down the field, we mentioned it. I don't think Sarkisian's gone to that route since maybe 2021 with Casey Thompson or even Alabama before then. It's never been that big of Quinn Ewers' game. We saw 10 pass attempts beyond 20 yards. It's pretty significant. When you hit them, they're great. When you don't, and you have guys underneath that have running space in front of them, that's when the learning curve comes in. And right now for Arch Manning, I think there's going to be a bit of an emphasis in, hey, let's just take positive gains, right? Can't go broke taking profit, Bobby. And right now when you're Arch Manning, that's the young part of him. It's great. You saw the flashy big plays against UTSA. You had a couple big ones on Saturday night against ULM. But when it's time to move the chains and keep the ball down the field, that's when you got to check down and let your guys work. Also, I think that one of those interceptions should have been caught by Jaydon Blue there. And at that point, if you do finish the night with 2 touchdowns and just 1 interception, is it this conversation that we're having as a result, to your point, more so in that development is, hey, know when to, dial up that fastball, know when to throw a curveball, know when to use your changeup. And that's where he continually will improve because of these in-game live reps.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want to add this for Arch Manning as well. I thought that he rebounded a little bit. He had a really poor 2 series in a row and then finished it off with a touchdown drive. So I feel like he got his feet back underneath him. And I do think he has some work ahead of him. CJ, you said you gave him a B-. The headline on ESPN this morning says Manning gets a C+ in debut. I'm probably in the C+, B- range as well. Again, that's not a bad grade for a first-time starter going into this. And you also mentioned those plays of 20 yards or longer, or those throws 20 yards or longer, 10 of them. Well, Arch Manning only threw 29 passes on the night. That's a third of his total pass attempts.
It's a lot.
Going more than 20 yards. There were not many passes that Steve Sarkisian attempted really behind the line of scrimmage or to motion, which is what he does a lot with Quinn Ewers. So it's a different type of quarterback and a different type of use than we've seen. All right, let's move on to running backs now. CJ, Jaydon Blue, player of the game for me. Young man out of Klein Kane, 124 or 25 yards rushing on 25 carries. Also had a catch. But it was the workman-like performance from Blue that surprised me so heavily. I can't believe Steve Sarkisian really gave him the rock that many times in a single game. This, among anything, will be a game that he can point to when it comes draft time. Look, I'm more than just a 10 to 15 carry a game guy. I can do it, and I did it here. Now, I know Louisiana Monroe is not the greatest team, but it was a very, very strong performance, in my opinion, for Jaydon Blue, one that NFL scouts will make sure they check on.
Yeah, 25 attempts, Bobby. Listen, his career high in touches coming into this season, I believe, was 14, and he did that twice a year ago. And that was out of necessity, right? He was that guy because, with CJ Baxter, you didn't have a Jonathan Brooks towards the end. You had to rely on him. Well, again, Texas, with injuries in this running back room, you're having to rely on him again, and he's showing up. 125 yards on the ground, 4 combined touchdowns. Heck of a day for him. And it can still get better, right? You talk about the drop on the flats. You talk about perhaps a ball that should have been caught that was, ended up being intercepted as well. For me, Jaydon Blue, it was the consistency of finding little slivers and 5 to 8 yard consistent gains via the ground. That's something there. And I know it's ULM, and we've talked about it, but in the SEC, when you find those consistent yards on the ground, that eats away at a defense. And especially in big games, you look at those kind of drives and they just take up time and you can't get them off the field. And that mindset for the defense just wears out. If you're able to do that consistently, it's so big for the offense in general, but for Jaydon Blue and specifically, confidence is what he's playing with now.
I tell you what, I want to add this in the running back room. Jarrett Gibson, of course, had 9 rushes for 32 yards, but 2 other guys, Ryan Niblett, I thought really gave the team a little bit of a spark there in the fourth quarter, really ran hard, was excited to get in the game. You could see it clearly. And then Colin Page, CJ, he was 10 carries for 60 yards, tied Blue with the long for the game and running with 20. I'm not so sure that Colin Page right now doesn't deserve more play. If Texas is going to be without Trey Wisner, they're already out without Christian Clark, as well as Cedric Baxter for the year. I'm not so sure that Colin Page somehow, some way, as they're looking to eat up carries and trying to get through a couple of games, doesn't need more. But I guess you can't give him any more than 10 on a night like they did last night.
I tell you what, I was so impressed with his vision. And I think that's something that running backs, new to the college game struggle with. And I think there's still room, a lot of room, really, for Jaydon Blue to improve with his vision and patience. I think, again, for Colin Page to come in and on that long run to sit there, kind of bounce around from hole to hole, find where he wants to go, cut back completely, and then make a guy miss and find the sideline there. That was a heck of a run for a guy that really hasn't seen a whole lot of live action at the college level. Again, he ran for 1,700 yards his senior year, Bobby. This guy has really good, experience finding ways to create big plays in the high school level. Now you're seeing it a little bit translate. He was a guy that was scoring touchdown after touchdown in the fall camp scrimmages. So he's got some juice to him. I'm with you. Maybe there is an avenue at some point for him to find snaps later on this year.
Well, if they're looking for guys, because Jarrett Gibson on Saturday night went out of the game with an injured ankle at a time.
And Trey Wisner did not play.
And so they're going down the bench, and frankly, Page looked like he might be a guy that they could at least utilize in situations where they could take carries off of other people, which is exactly what they did on Saturday night. So I'm not calling for him to be the starter or anything like that. Just thinking he's played pretty good on Saturday night. What as far as your grade for the running backs, I gave him an A+. I thought Blue had his best game as a Longhorn. I know he dropped a pass or two, but CJ, he was the difference in some regards in this game offensively when Manning couldn't be consistent as a passer and everything was deep. It was Jaydon Blue really that kind of took control of this game and put the team a little bit, the offense at least, a little bit on his back when other aspects may have been struggling some.
I'm sitting right at an A. Again, there's still ways for them to improve. I mentioned the drops. I mentioned the pass game. One play that stands out to me that was a positive is Ryan Niblett catching that 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 in the red zone, making 2 guys miss and finding his way to a first down. That's a play individually that I don't know if Texas makes a year ago. And to do that as a running back, 3, maybe running back 4 at the moment, that's a heck of a sign for that room and his versatility individually. I sit at an A because holistically, when you find the end zone, was it 5 total times from the running back room with Jarrett Gibson finding it too? Pretty darn good day.
Yeah, it really was. Sark clearly wanted to get the run game going. All right, before we get to the wide receivers, which was a interesting show, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Allegiant Digital Marketing. Did you know that among the top 9 challenges business owners face, the most difficult ones include finding customers, increasing brand awareness, digital advertising, and lead generation? What if I could point you to a local homegrown agency here in Austin that could solve those problems for your business once and for all? For more than 25 years, Allegiant Digital Marketing founder and CEO Chad Markham, a UT grad and instructor of the Digital Marketing Bootcamp here at UT Austin, has helped thousands of businesses overcome these challenges. Take advantage of their Hook 'em Horns special and save up to $2,500 in advertising. Visit allegiantdigital.com/ontexasfootball to learn more today. Thanks to Allegiant Digital for their sponsorship. All right, wide receiver CJ, man. First of all, let's just put it out there. Arch completed 15 total passes. They went to 11 different receivers. They are spreading the rock around. The leading receiver for the Longhorns in number of receptions was Silas Bolden. He also had a target that could have been a catch. Isaiah Bond and Ryan Wingo had two, but Matthew Golden, Jonte Cook, Ryan Niblett, DeAndre Moore, one. So Arch spread it around pretty good. But I still think that one of the biggest mismatches in this game was this Texas receiver core versus the ULM defensive backs.
Yeah, I mean, they sure tested them pretty deep all night, Bobby, that's for sure. And to your point for Silas Bolden, I thought he had a much larger, much earlier impact in this game than we had seen in the three previous. That's a good sign for what he can do later on this year and how big of a piece he will be. It's also worth noting DeAndre Moore left that game with a hip pointer, Sarkisian said after the game. We'll see how long that lingers around. His impact obviously felt more so in the quick game, in blocking for screens, finding ways to crack back on linebackers and safeties. But for me, and I think we saw it at times, there is a little bit of Arch Manning that wants to just go find Ryan Wingo and just say, hey, it's your target, you make the play, right? And I think, again, you look at Ryan Wingo's game, there's ways for him to improve. There's a play on a stop route where he didn't come back to the ball completely and he didn't catch it as a result, right? And it was a closer play than previously thought. If he comes back, takes a step towards that football, it's a completed pass for 9-10 yards, and who knows what he does after the catch. But Isaiah Bond, Silas Bolden, Ryan Wingo, Matthew Golden, all these guys, the deep playability, what we thought was going to be the case for this Texas team with all of its speed. It's going to be interesting. But when Texas is distributing the ball this much, Bobby, and you mentioned 11 different players recorded a catch, how do you stop? Who do you hone in on to stop? Who do you key to stop? You're going to have to rely on a nickel or cornerbacks playing one-on-one, say linebackers lined up with a tight end or a running back in one-on-one. That doesn't feel like a recipe for success for opposing defenses, not with the way that Texas is able to distribute the rock, with the protection that they got, and obviously the talent that they now possess at wide receiver. This is feeling like the offense that Sark envisioned whenever he took the job, and now it's here, and you're seeing kind of the byproduct of a lot of talent and a lot of different ways to get the ball out to those wide receivers.
I noticed that on Wingo as well, that one ball. I agree with you. Bond didn't make a contested catch late on a deep ball that looked completable. Arch threw a good one to Ryan Wingo, may have gotten interfered with deep and held up a little bit. But, that's going to happen. All in all, though, this receiver core is just really, really talented, no matter which one you pick. To your point, what are they going to do now without DeAndre Moore? Well, maybe the answer is Silas Bolden in the slot a little bit. We'll see, or Jonte Cook. Will be interesting to see.
But I wanted to get your thoughts as well on kind of the scheme, right? We talked about the deep throws there. We didn't see the short, quick bubbles or missile screens or whatever. Is that a quarterback? Is it a wide receiver thing? Or are you just waiting to see what works with Arch? It was different, completely different.
Did you see Jaydon Blue go in motion at all today, or at all on Saturday night?
It wasn't very often.
No,
maybe
and 2 or 3 times doing like a steady diet the first 3 games, motioning out his running back and getting him going. We didn't see that. I don't think once on Saturday night. So I definitely think that there was a difference. He didn't do it with the only person I think he put in motion and then may have targeted is Silas Bolden. And didn't do it with Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond did not play much in the second half. I just think that Sark was resting him a little bit, just like he did with some of the defensive players like Anthony Hill. But my point being, I do think it was different. I think Sark was trying to force Arch through his progressions, and that meant more downfield attempts for the wide receivers, of which I mean, I thought they made a good play on the ball. Matthew Golden made a good play on a ball. That was, a difficult catch. Isaiah Bond kind of lulled the defender into sleep and then zoomed past him for that big catch on the second drive of the game. So I think about it, CJ, and I think that the Longhorns have a group of receivers that can beat you a number of different ways, and you'll see that at different times with different game situations that Sark wants to put them in. What kind of grade did you give these guys on the night in this win over ULM?
I think I lean B plus. I thought it was a solid showing. I don't think it was otherworldly. There were still, opportunities for plays to be made. What wasn't encouraging, I'll say, is the big plays to several different guys. And
Yep.
it felt like we finally saw an incompletion to Ryan Wingo for once this year, whereas, we really hadn't seen that previously. But again, I thought it was a good showing, obviously. Still can improve.
All right, Gunnar Helm and Juan Davis were the primaries for the night. We did not see Amari Niblack, I don't think, all game long. We saw Spencer Shannon as well as Jordan Washington in the game. What were your thoughts, CJ, on Juan Davis and Gunnar Helm? I personally I'm really loving Juan Davis as a blocker right now.
Yeah, I am too. In the way that they're using him too, it's not as your traditional inline tight end. It's kind of as a H-back, fullback. Let's throw him as like an offset piece in the shotgun pistol formation, whatever it might be. It's interesting, and it's creating different ways that defenses now have to plan against and scheme against in the week leading up. And who knows? He's quite the athlete, Bobby. Let's not forget. At some point, you're going to see a wheel route from him out of the backfield. You're going to see something from Juan Davis in the pass game. It was a quiet night for both of them, right? Only a catch apiece. Amari Niblack not on the field as much as maybe we anticipated tonight or really this season coming into the year. But in total, you have to be pleased with the product that they're putting out. And again, Gunnar Helm and his ability to be an impact blocker in the run game, so important.
Yeah, I think both he and Helm and Davis blocked well on Saturday. I'm gonna give them a solid B plus. I think that they are a formidable group right now. It's one of the surprises of the year for me, maybe on offense, the surprise of the year on offense. All right, let's talk about the offensive line. That'll be our final big grade before we grade the offense as a whole. CJ, not as many penalties, not as many false starts. Perhaps they're calmed down a little bit now, starting to get their sea legs a little bit. But there was some leakiness, is the word that Tony Hills used in postgame. I still think, though, that the Texas offensive line, it's asserted itself when it needed to. 66 on the yards on the ground in the third quarter when Texas wanted to put them away for good and really step on their throat and go for it. They were able to. Your thoughts on the offensive line? It wasn't perfect, right? But it was pretty darn good.
It was. And again, to your point, I mean, it wasn't perfect, and it won't be. But, with a team like ULM, you might have expected it to be a little bit better. You allow one sack. The running game, I thought, was pretty good. One thing we knew about ULM coming into this game is they could get after the quarterback. And I thought early in that game, the first quarter, they did. I thought that the pressure was there, but you saw Texas go on that run of 4 straight touchdown drives after the interception, right? They found their groove, and a lot of that was because of the offensive line. To me, the biggest takeaway was in the red zone. And I thought a lot of the emphasis for Steve Sarkisian on Saturday night was, hey, offensive line, we're relying on you guys to score touchdowns tonight. We're going to score. We're going to run the ball. We're going to let you guys pave the way. And it ultimately paid off for the Longhorns Saturday evening, Bobby. I thought that was the biggest takeaway for me is they're now moving people better than they ever have under Kyle Flood and Steve Sarkisian in the red area. And going into the SEC play with the confidence that they have, hearing Kelvin Banks after the game speak to that, we've heard about it all offseason. Now we're doing it, and we're playing very confidently. Massive, massive, massive.
You mentioned them actually moving people. It's amazing what happens when talent gets experience. And I think that's what's happening with the Texas offensive line in that regard.
Oh, yeah.
They're talented, and now they're experienced as well. Again, not perfect, but certainly, just so it was also not perfect, but still very good in an effective way for this game plan from Sark. All right, let's talk offense. Oh, we need to give them a grade. I give the offensive line a B+ on Saturday night. That sound about right to you?
Right there with you, Bobby.
Yeah, it's amazing that we're giving these grades, and Texas scored 51 points, 49 via offense, the 2-point for safety coming on from the defense. It is just amazing we're giving those grades. And that leads me to this. What do we grade the offense as a whole?
Ooh.
My takeaway is 497 yards of total offense, effective in the red zone, to your point, CJ, earlier, effective on third downs largely, only had a lull really on offense in the third period, or third quarter. Otherwise, you mentioned the 4 straight touchdowns. They had some big explosive plays across a number of different people. The running game really got going. I think this was a B probably from Texas. It was not a great outing, and I can't believe I'm saying a B when Texas scored 51 points. Right? that gives you a sense of what our expectations are right now, and it shocks me a little bit because I feel like I'm grading Vince Young's teams when they were scoring 50 on everybody, and I'd give them a B. And like, what am I doing? And the reason why is because I knew they were that explosive. They could have been more explosive, and I think Arch missed on a couple of easy touchdown passes potentially. So a lot of meat left on the bone.
I think I lean B+. Again, you score 7 touchdowns. You're perfect in the red zone. You have good moments, right? With 12 plays going. You're categorized as explosive. 8 in the pass game, 4 in the run game. That's a solid day. And again, you're playing a 2-0 team. They got scholarship guys too over there, Bobby. So 7 touchdowns, I'll never complain about. What keeps that from being an A is the 2 turnovers and those 2 drives in the third quarter where it felt like everything was, I would say, you look like the offense was playing with an arm behind their back or whatever. It felt different compared to the rest of the evening.
I would agree with that. It felt disconnected.
Absolutely.
All the other series, other than the obviously the turnovers, felt connected, but that one just didn't. It felt like Texas went deep and failed, frankly. And we've chronicled that early in his career. Sark went at Texas. Sark went deep a lot and did not keep the ball, and that the end result was a lot of 3-and-outs. We'll see with Quinn Ewers, with Arch Manning, if his progression is similar to Quinn Ewers over time, where he starts dialing that back a little bit and starts paying more attention to moving the team as opposed to just going for the jugular every time. I went with a B. I think that's fair, even though they did amass 497 yards of total offense. Just crazy. Scored 7 touchdowns. I'm going to give them a B. Crazy. All right. CJ, that's going to do it for the offensive grades. Thanks again to our friend over at Allegiant Digital Marketing, Chad Markham and his team. CJ, I'll see you again. We're going to do the defensive grades here later today as well. For CJ Vogel and Matt Hutchison, our producer, I'm Bobby Burton. You guys have a good one. 51-3, 7 touchdowns. Hook 'em.